to address this series. The topic of today's session is Future of Work and Compassionate Leadership. Sir, may I now request you to please address the participants.
Can you hear me now, Dr. Jain?
Yes, sir.
Okay. First of all, let me thank the Indore Management Association for inviting me to be here with you. Dr. Jain, you and your president, P. Akhilesh Rathi, and all other members of the Indore Management Association. It is my pleasure to be here, and I'm delighted at this opportunity, and I hope I will also learn new things from you as I leave this session. I think, this COVID pandemic that came to us all of a sudden, if I may say, or almost all of a sudden, was something that most of us had not expected. And certainly not the extent or the duration of this and the kind of sudden impact it would have on our lives, business-wise, or even personal and family lives. So this came as almost a shock. And that has, if I may say, put all our traditional ways of working to rest. And we have had to think on our feet, work on our feet, act on our feet, and get to new ways of not only dealing with this pandemic from a health standpoint, but also from our own personal workplace standpoint. The very fact that we are having this wonderful webinar, seminar, whatever you may call it, today, in this manner virtually, itself is a change. And I think all of us have learned something new. We have learned greater use of technology, how to become more tech savvy. And this itself is an innovation. So in a way, Indore Management Association is reinventing itself already. And we are all doing this. So I think this is a good sign. And this is a sign of how future will be. So therefore, this itself takes us forward. The shock that COVID provided was not only for health, as I said, but in the entire economy. So while the government is busy saving lives in the first instance, I think it is businesses and our responsibility to contribute in saving livelihoods. So it's not just about saving lives, but saving livelihoods, because the economic shock of this entire thing has been so great all across the value chain, and not just for business, but for the common man, for the citizen, for the people who are less fortunate and less privileged than us. They have been impacted even more severely. So this is something that we have to deal with. And culturally, societally, nothing has prepared us for this. So this is very important. Our lockdown was aimed at providing time to help with our infrastructure, with our medical infrastructure, to prepare for the inevitability of the COVID pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue is that COVID is not going away on a particular date. It is not as if you have a lockdown and then you open the lockdown and then everything goes away. So this is something that is not going to go away, and we will have to learn to live with it. The good news, if I may use that expression, while it has devastating effects in many ways, and we have lost many hundreds of thousands of precious lives across the world, including in our own country, we've had mortality. But the good news, if I may say, is that it is a virus. And the only way out of this is like any other virus where our bodies become immune to it. So I think we need not panic. We certainly need to be cautious. We certainly need to be very careful. And we certainly need to make modifications in the way that we conduct ourselves, whether in the workplace or socially or even at home, practicing all the health and hygiene um, uh, things that have been told to us. But I think that the issue is unless we are going to get immune to it, and vaccine, by the time it is developed, it may still take some time. But even when we get a normal viral fever, the medicines that the doctor gives us are not really curative. They are more for easing and comforting us to get over that time. So if we are given a paracetamol at that time, it is to take care of body aches we may have, to take care of the high fever we have. If you have a cold, you're given antihistamines, which takes care of those things, but it does not cure the viral fever. The virus is fought by body, and we have to fight it out. Our body fights it, and then it is done. So the same thing is going to happen with COVID, and it is going to be some kind of an overall immunity in the human system, what is called herd immunity, which will be the ultimate way, besides the vaccine, as and when it is developed. So we have to change the way we are working, and we will have to adapt to that. I'd like to quote somebody who once said, and I quote, "Challenges are what make life interesting, and overcoming them is what makes life meaningful," unquote. So we have to think of this paradigm in this way. So what are the immediate challenges we have? Some of the challenges we have, of course, I mentioned, how do we best save lives in terms of having health and safety for our citizens? How do we save livelihoods, which is really the jobs and income, particularly for the less fortunate parts of society? And for that, we need to get our economy back on track. In this gathering today, almost all of us, or all of us, are from management, and therefore we understand very clearly that getting the economy back on track is very essential, and we need to get back to if I may say, a normal. Now, whether this is the old normal or this is the new normal, I don't think we are easily going to get to what we thought in our minds as a normal. There is going to be a new normal because things will change. So the landscape of workplaces, how does that change? And I think there are several factors. And I don't suppose I have all the answers, but we are going to discover them also as we go along and see how we are going to learn new things. But I think one obvious thing, as we are doing in this talk, is remote working. And if I may say, it has now got to not work from home, but work from anywhere. We look at it this way. Today's situation is work from anywhere. Whether you are at home, you are somewhere else, or tomorrow, hopefully you will be sitting in a coffee shop. You'll be working from there. So it is work from anywhere. And also, as we have seen in this lockdown, it is also, unfortunately, work anytime, because we are having to work at all odd hours and respond to situations as they arise. So this is itself is a change. It is no longer a 9 to 5 issue. 9 to 5 is a mindset. Of course, people in the knowledge industry, in the IT industry, were already working different hours. because they were working with overseas clients or overseas offices and connecting there, which were very different in different time zones. And therefore, they were working from home and they had greater access to technology and they were more used to working from home, which a large part of us is now coming to grips with. So, working from home. But is working from home all that easy? Some people have said that, this COVID will force much greater parts of the organization to work from home. I guess part of it is true. If we have been running our business, for example, if I was to personalize it in our group, then with offices first in shutdown, everything was work from home. Then with offices opening, but with limited attendance, we don't want everybody to come back. So we have a roster system by which we have rotating attendance. And therefore, if the organization, if the business is functioning in this manner, the question that arises in our minds, or at least in my mind, I was discussing with some of my colleagues. I said, if we are being able to work this way, let us talk about which parts of our business are not functioning efficiently. So that means if we had X number of people coming to office every day to work in a particular way, now with lesser number of people, where are we really suffering? What would we like to do better? So these are the kinds of questions that will come. And perhaps what will happen is there will be a component. Now, this will depend on business. In IT-enabled businesses, this component could be much larger in consultancy, in banking, in a whole lot of things which are not necessarily client-facing in that sense. But in many other businesses, there will also be a component of rotating work, having hot seats, or some people working from home on a permanent basis. So these are going to be changes that will happen. It is going to be more decentralized, if I may put it this way. And the decentralization is not going to be only a work. With it will come decentralization of decision making, because people are not physically available to be present in a meeting. Therefore, and you cannot be meeting only virtually. And situations will arise which are going to require quick solutions. Therefore, this will also lead to a degree of decentralization of decision making itself. And perhaps decentralization as we have from a hierarchical organization in authorities and organization structures. So this is one area that I see which might change. But on the other hand, when we talk in terms of humanness, work from home also has its own tolls. You have a family and everybody is in a constricted space. The spouse also very often is working. Our homes, not all of us are fortunate to have homes which have large spaces. But even those apartments, you may have elders, you may have children, you would have children, and you would have the working couple. Now, everybody needs their space. And therefore, going to work outside of home was also about creating space. It is a cultural issue. It is a family issue, a social issue. Therefore, there are the other sides to say, while yes, you could work from home by being connected with technology, the issue is really going to be, would we like to do it? Is it, what should I say, is it advisable on a humane point of view to just do that? We are reading in the papers also that today, with everybody being confined together, there is an increase in people mental health issues. It doesn't mean that people are going mad or insane. It just means there is greater stress as more people are confined in a particular space. So therefore, there will have to be, in my view, there will have to be a balance. There will have to be a balance of remote working, and there will have to be a balance of structured workspaces where people will come and work for a certain period of time. So there will have to be a balance. But one thing is very clear, things are going to be more and more decentralized. And organizations therefore have to be prepared for this kind of situation. One other important aspect is a lot of we are all human beings, and a lot of our interaction happens through body language. This tends to suffer a little bit when we are connected virtually. We are virtual. You can see me, you can see my face, you can also see some of my expressions, but perhaps you can't feel my emotion. And when we are working as human beings, or when we interact, whether we are working, whether we are with friends, whether we are with family, a great deal of us, a great part is about the emotional interaction. And that is one part which I think can happen only physically. So there will have to be, so when we talk in terms of saying, look at, the future, but we also look at the compassion part of it. This is where this emotional part comes in. Another thing, organizations so far have been designed for efficiency, or we've been trying to redesign organizations all around to be designed for efficiency. Now, I think we have to think about designing our organizations for resilience as well. It is not just efficiency, it is resilience. So resilience is if we have to work from home suddenly and not come to office, that is resilience. How do we work when we have to work maybe without all the resources that we might have had at our disposal? How do we work where we have people at different locations, yet we need to arrive at decisions, yet we need to take action? So the resilience is very important. What happens when there are people who are in different places? So in the lockdown, there were people who were literally in different places, but work had to go on. So there had to be something in the organization which allowed for this resilience to happen. It could not be hierarchical and straitjacketed and top down alone. It would have to be bottom up as well. So organizations have to be built perhaps now with greater resilience, more flexibility, more agility, and more adaptability. I think these are things which will have to come into the organizations as we redesign them. And the future of work will have to be much more responsive and flexible. We will also have to look at how we're going to engage with our customers. And this will have to be based not just on what we used to call in management jargon, customer delight or serving customers. But I think we have to look at customer experience. How does the customer experience our products and services? And how do we come to benefit her or him for whatever they want? So it is going to be about customer experience. Even when we are talking digitally, or when we order today, let us say that when you take out order food from outside, it is going to be not the quality of the food alone, but the experience of how were you able to order online, how easy or difficult it was, what was your experience in receiving it, and were you satisfied with the quality? So it is not just the food quality, it is the whole experience that is going to be important. And therefore, it is about interactivity with the customer, and that will change. Many more, as we found in our own business with the pandemic, shutdown, that we had to explore new channels and look at new channels of distribution, new channels of engaging and reaching the customer, which was earlier either not looked at or was underemphasized. So a lot of online work has started. And some of this will permanently change distribution channels, even in traditional businesses. I'm not saying all of that will go online, but there will definitely be a component of that which will go and change some channels. And therefore, we come back to the issue of customer experiences, and we'll have to reimagine some of those things. The other inevitable thing that we have talked about is going to be clearly the issue of digital. And in future, our workplaces are going to be far more digitally wired. We can do much more work digitally, accomplish many more tasks remotely through use of technology. And this itself is going to lead, or is already leading, to much greater use of tools like analytics, of artificial intelligence, of all these kinds of aids which will help people and management in managing things much more remotely and a more digital manner. So therefore, these are things which are going to come. Even in manufacturing, the IoT, the Internet of Things, machine learning, deep learning, all of these are things which are already in place, and this pandemic is only going to has only accelerated the desire to achieve efficiencies as well as achieve customer experiences and job satisfaction in the workplace are using these tools. So these are changes that are happening. I think our organization structures will also have to be more flat. The hierarchical structure will definitely flatten. So it is not just flattening the pandemic curve, but it is really flattening of organization structures that are going to be happening. There will also be greater diversity, and our organization culture will have to change. And I think when we are away, or when people are away remote, it is culture, an organization's culture, which is the glue which binds that organization. It is not the physicality, but it is the culture of that organization. It is the emotional connect, the belongingness, and the feeling of working towards a common purpose, which is going to bind these organizations. And therefore, culture will become an even greater part of the organization, or its importance in our organizations will go up. And when we look at remote working, it automatically brings much more diversity and inclusion of different people. So all of these elements, now we will not see all of this at once. Some of these one can perhaps think about and design, but many of these will evolve. So we will have to be adaptable in terms of doing it. But this again brings us back to the issue of the human touch, of the humaneness, of the feel that we all belong as one, even though we may not be all physically there at the same place at the same time. So these are going to be changes that will happen. The other change is, if we want to work efficiently, I think we will also have to look at greater partnerships. And these partnerships are going to be multi-way. There will be partnership between companies. There will be partnership between companies and other service providers to provide delivery. Like we have seen, food companies partnering in this lockdown with online delivery services. People who were not partnered with each other earlier, thus establishing a very different supply chain from what was there perhaps earlier. So partnerships are going to be there. Collaborative efforts between teams working across places is also going to be there. So these are going to be partnerships between organizations, between people, which will deliver us the best solutions for what we are trying to serve. So I think partnerships or greater partnerships are going to be another area which is quite clear. The other areas which are going to come along with this is our own mindsets. We have, all of us, or most of us, have been brought up with a certain mindset of this is how we work. That is breaking down. And we have to find ways of accomplishing our goals when things are not normal. And that requires a change in mindset. Where we have today that whatever we learn today through formal education, with the pace of change, becomes, if not obsolete, but certainly becomes outdated very rapidly. So we have to all become lifelong learners. And as longevity is going up, we will also see longer spans of working life. Because if you're going to be, if longevity is going up to 80, 85, 90 years, and if you're to retire at 60, what are you going to do for the rest of the 30 years when you are healthy? So there will be work which will continue for longer periods of time, whether it is formal employment or not. And perhaps we will also see a diminution in what we used to take earlier for granted, long-term employment or lifelong employment. Those things will change. Those paradigms are going to change, or actually have already started changing. But today, when we look at this, if we need to look at how we are going to be productive for years, for decades, we will also have to learn new things. Take the very example that I talked of at the beginning of this discussion. The fact that we are able to interact together today virtually. Now, I must confess, I was not adept at doing this, as adept at doing this before the lockdown. I have learned also, may not be perfectly, but how to interact with people, how to listen to people, how to get work done through screen sharing, how to be able to respond and take decisions to using these technologies. So this is new learning. If customer behavior, if our customer experience is going to be different, that is a different learning. Companies will have to learn how to serve customers in a different way. When restaurants are going to work partially, when our travel is going to be conducted in a different way, where we may have limited luggage, we will have to practice different kinds of hygiene. We may have to arrive at airports and earlier and be screened and a whole lot of stuff that will be different. We will have to learn to adapt with that. And if that takes more time to travel, we will have to learn to conduct business remotely without traveling. So therefore, these are new things, and these also go back to the mindset issue that I was talking about. Today, the mindset also, traditionally would have been, no, I need to go and travel. I have these 2-3 people I have to meet. Yes, it is great to have that interaction. There will be ways of accomplishing that meeting. But today, with these limitations, we can't say this business has to stop because people can't travel. So we connect remotely, whether it is through virtual calls like this, whether it is through telephone, whichever way we do this. But we do connect. People have formed WhatsApp groups for common interests, even on workplaces. So there are all these kinds of things which are being done today, which were not being done yesterday. And that is part of the learning process. So therefore, I think we'll have to learn to be, as I said, lifelong learners if we have to be productive in this longer lifespan that we have. It would have happened anyway, but it's only that disruptions like this accelerate change. Change, history has taught us, has been the most when there has been some major disruption. It could be calamitous, it could be a war, it could be a disease, it could be a natural calamity. But whenever there have been disruptions away from the normal, there the maximum change has occurred. And that is what is going to be the situation. We will also have to learn new skills. We will also have to understand that perhaps today there will be knowledge workers who will be working on multiple jobs and multiple assignments. It need not be a very linear function. These are all going to be changes that will happen. We may move from full-time workers to some kind of skill-based or competency-based contractual working or a fixed term employment. You need some particular things to be solved. Those people at that point in time. They need not be present in the organization all the time. We were doing this in the past through consultancies, through a whole lot of other special projects. But these kinds of things may perhaps accelerate, and these kinds of things are going to be different. We will also look at, if you look at what is being discussed nowadays about the global supply chain and the disruption therein, I think we have to understand that global supply chains, which have been built over decades, can't be broken down overnight. And it would not be advisable to break that down overnight. We cannot become simply protectionist and build barriers around us. We will have to address the whole issue of trade. But at the same time, we will also have to look at changes in there is a term called globalization, which is, while you have global ambitions, but you rely more on local manufacturing or local things. So we will have to be a hybrid of greater localization, but we will still have to address the world in terms of our products and services. So there are going to be these kinds of things and these kinds of changes that are happening, and that will happen. So the future of the workplace cannot be all preconceived today. It will also evolve, but it is quite inevitable that some of these changes that I have mentioned will definitely come about. And in a way, to summarize, we will have to be much more agile. We will have to have greater human connectedness in order to overcome the barriers of distance and the barriers of being physically in touch with people. We will have to deal with ambiguity, with uncertainties, and sometimes even managing contradictions. We will have to be far more digitally connected. And we will have to learn to work in distributed teams. We will have to reskill ourselves. We will have to become lifelong learners. We will have to discard some things that we were originally used to. So many of these changes are going to be there. And really speaking, we will all have to adapt to that. So that is where I would say I would rest at this point in time, and I would be happy to interact with you depending on the time we have. Thank you very much.
So there are a few queries for you. So it is, first question is, with increasing longevity, the creation of fresh job position at all levels will not be there. In fact, the jobs will come down. This may not be good for the public at large. So disruption in HR, there are second question. So first you can answer this. This may not be good for the public at large.
Why don't you give 2 or 3 questions? Maybe they have some common thread, and maybe I'll try and
Yeah,
address them.
sure. I'll read further. Disruption in IR will lead to difficult time for industry. How to tackle this for industry? From industry's point of view, rather.
Okay. Okay. let me try and talk about this. Jobs coming down is certainly a current phenomena and a threat and challenge in front of all of us. In fact, the loss of livelihoods is the biggest challenge in front of our economy, and actually, it is a global challenge. However, we have to see what do we mean by jobs. Do jobs only mean, if I may say, quote unquote, an employment oriented job? Or do jobs mean people becoming own entrepreneurs, becoming employed? So the definition of jobs will perhaps change as well. So when we talk, and with the longevity part of the question that you said, we will have to learn we will do different jobs in our lives and not the same job. So, like you have seen, there were people, let's say, even in this management association, the typical retirement age for everybody in working life has been 60 years. So, we do a job, and after that, we retire, and people are still healthy and active. So, they do other things. They may get into consultancy, they may get into allied areas. They may turn. So let us say, let me give a very simple example. Let's say there has been a person who has been a purchase manager in a company, and that person retires at a senior position. That person later on becomes maybe an agent from or does some kind of consultancy in those areas. People become self-employed, and therefore jobs. The more we are able to learn, the more we will be adept at doing these things. But I am not undermining the current challenge of jobs, which will come back only when our economy comes back. And therefore, it's very important that we are able to bring back collectively our economy on the fastest we can. Regarding disruption in the IR, it is also true. There is going to be some degree of stability of this short. But in the long run, in any case, when we have an economy that is growing, so if you have an economy that is growing, that is the way we will be able to create jobs, and we will be able to, in fact, I would say, lift people out of poverty. So that will happen that way. But in the meanwhile, we will have to reimagine and re-engineer working conditions. So, for example, instead of having permanent workers all the time, there would be, which I refer to, some degree of contractual employment, some degree of flexible, and there will have to be a give and take in industrial relations between corporate as well as the workers. And I think given today's situation, people are not entirely close to the idea of having something at least rather than not having anything. So that will also have to be the IR industrial relations themselves will have to be reimagined, if I may say.
Okay. So, continuing this question, sir, use of COVID-19 lockdown time is to upgrade and reskill in the industry as well. So, can you suggest something about this, like how we should upgrade or how we should reskill ourselves? How to catch up, rather?
I wouldn't say catch up, let me say reskill. So
Yeah.
reskilling, as I mentioned in remarks, is very important. And reskilling depends also partly what you would be expected to do. So if my work content changes, then I have to become I have to skill myself or equip myself with that. Now, the good news here is that today there is a huge amount of content that is on learning online, and most of it, or virtually a large part of it, is for free. I will give you the example that even, for example, we have a university that we promoted in Jaipur, and we are offering online content. For example, when the lockdown happened, the university had to shut down. Courses were not complete, like any other university or any other college. Education, all of us have children, or most of us have children of different ages, some college, some maybe in school. They have all completed. And today, there's a huge amount of online material that is available to virtually learn anything. So, the good news is that it is possible to do that, to reskill ourselves. But again, I would go back to our own mindset and our own willingness to learn. I must first realize that there is a need to learn because the world has changed. The world has changed. And I am willing to learn to re equip myself. Let me put it this way. So it is possible. I'm sure in your Indore Management Association, you are offering online opportunities or webinars and things so people can learn things.
This is new for us, rather. So, next question, sir. 2020 has been a tough year. It looks like tough again for the 6 months. How do you think it will impact the way leadership needs to evolve?
So, this is a good question. See, leadership has to always be uh, seen, it has to always be available to, and leadership is what allows or calls for organizations to galvanize together. Now, leadership has to be there whether there are good times or there are bad times. No organization, institution, whether it is the government as an institution, whether it is our institutions like courts or other bank bodies or businesses or even hospitals, even NGOs, all of them require leadership. Leadership is required whether it is good times or difficult times. But the only difference is that in difficult times, the need is felt even more. So,
Yes.
leadership at the time really is about engaging with people. It is about understanding and explaining how. It is about reassuring people that, let us not be scared. Everything is not lost. So yes, we are all facing tough businesses, but not lost. Businesses will come back, provided we have the will to come back. And therefore, leadership is really about that. I will share with you when we were in lockdown in our group, we have many businesses. So what we did is we did several things. We organized Zoom calls like this or virtual calls like this with senior leadership on a more frequent basis than what we were doing earlier to understand what is really happening in different parts of our business. What are the challenges? What are we doing for the health and hygiene of our people, of our workers? We also, at this point in time, HR played a much greater role. And not just HR, but the senior leadership team was reaching out much more to smaller groups of employees to inquire about their families, to understand about what is going on, how are they being able to work, what are they experiencing. So that is what brought in human connectedness, and I think that is where leadership comes in when you are able to actually reach out to your team.
Sir, Mr. Akhilesh Rathi, sir, would like to ask few questions. He is with us now. So, sir, please, if you can. carry this forward with further questions.
And I'm sorry for joining you late because there was some issue on the internet. I was only getting a 2G connection and there was a power failure in an area. So I've been stuck for the last couple of minutes to
So
join in.
no, see, your webinar was going on, and that is part of our learning, and that's part of our flexibility and adaptability and agility of the Indore Association. So काम तो चल रहा है.
Absolutely. The show must go on, sir. The show must go on, and I'm grateful that all of you have done it, sir. Thank you so much, sir. As we talk of compassionate leadership, there are a lot of companies which are facing challenge of very high level of liquidity at this moment, and they do not even have sufficient money to disperse salaries and wages. Now, those companies, despite having very compassionate leadership, very committed management, but they are finding it difficult, more so in small, medium enterprises, also in a lot of large enterprises. How do you think those kind of things should be attended in the present times?
So, Rathiji, this is a great question. It is not, let me first say, it is not an easy answer. And there is no right answer, perhaps, to this.
Mm-hmm.
Business will certainly have to fend for itself. And the business is not going to take a call to say, Ki bhai, I will continue to, see that there is no hardship incurred. I'll continue to pay everybody, even though the business will then be closed.
Mm-hmm.
The way people have tried to approach it is to explain what the reality is fairly transparently and make adjustments with people to say, okay, if you were getting 100 rupees yesterday, I was able to give you. I could afford. Today, unfortunately, this is a reality which is not for you, but for me as well.
Yes, worldwide reality.
So it is all of us in it together. So can we work by saying that we each take 50 instead of 100? That way we can manage. And when things are better, we will again go back. So we will have to do, and but let's be clear, there is inevitability about a certain percentage. And your previous questioners also asked about the IR issues and job losses. This is a reality. But I think we will have to try and see how we can do it more compassionately, how we can do it more transparently. So instead of firing people, some companies have given them furloughs. Some people have said that, we will adjust some of your leaves against this. So you try and find solutions which the organization is also able to make its ends meet, and you are able to do that. Now, the other side is also what we talked about, reskilling. If there are different kinds of things, we help those people reskill? Can we help them? So what we have also done, for example, is that the government has offered, let us say, in MSMEs, financing, possible financing. Now it is not easy. So what we have done is we have tried to work with our MSME vendors and said, okay, we help you get that loan.
Okay.
Taken on your books, not on mine, but can we help you? Sometimes they don't have all the ability to be able to access or talk to all the banks, etc., etc. So if we can be facilitators, we can do this. With our workforce, we have said, look, the government is offering these kinds of benefits at home, whether it is ration, whether it is food, whatever they are. So we educate them in saying, okay, this is available from the government. So can we become catalysts in helping this kind of process?
So what you mean to say is we'll have to design a sort of a win-win situation where both parties find some comfort in terms of some support money, some deferment, some maybe reduction, and when things improve, we take care of them back as in the original situation.
Exactly.
Nina, you can take more questions, please.
Yes. So there is another question from Mr. Aman. Recession hits once every decade. Earlier it was the Great Recession of 2007. Now it is the pandemic. how can we as professionals become recession proof? Yeah, how can we make ourselves recession proof? So,
Amanji,
Dr.
if we would all not be millionaires, but we would be billionaires, all of us, each one of us. But on a more serious note, you see, this is all about see that there are some things which are inevitable. And the inevitability is about the fact that there will be good times and there will be times which are going to be not so good. So we have to prepare and conserve for that. It is like it is a simple thing. Why take an issue of a recession? Take your own personal life, take your own home. When you earn money, you hopefully save some money. It is not that you don't need to save, but frugality or that saving will come of use to you when maybe something happens which is not. Maybe there is, God forbid, an illness which requires more attention, which requires that one is out of work for a while. It could be a family member. So that is when those things come in. So we have to all prepare. Our businesses have to prepare. What happens is when there are good times, we all, and it's not just include me, we get carried away. And we say, right now times are good, let's expand, let's do this, let's spend this, spend this. We also need to know that while times are good, we cannot predict when, but there will be a time when perhaps when there will be a period when times will not be so good business. And therefore we need to prepare for that, be a little conservative. And that's how we have to, that's how we will do it. There is no magic formula. I mean, there are monetary policies which try and take care in terms of change in money supply and interest rate changes and increasing liquidity or decreasing liquidity. That's what the central bank does in trying to deal with inflation or deflation or as it comes. But I think at the end of the day, each business has to prepare for itself and be a little, what should I say, conscious. Be conscious of the fact that I need to have some savings. So, like when this pandemic has hit people, companies, and maybe it is not our choice, but companies which have had some liquidity, which have been a little less leveraged, are finding it a little, or let's say their hardships are a little less than others. So that is the only way I guess we can get out of it.
So there is one more question regarding you would understand like the employees and the citizens worry, fears, and they have reduced confidence during this COVID and other major crisis. So how do you think the global pandemic that has struck us create to handle all these anxieties and uncertainties? Do your company do anything for this handling anxieties and uncertainties? The fear of people, the worries of people, how you handle that?
So I think this is one factor which the fear regarding COVID has been, if not equal, stronger than the reality. People are afraid. In some of my interactions with the government, one of the points that I had made to them was that how can we collectively, as businesses and the government, uh, bring back confidence amongst people, among citizens. See, part of the issue that you saw of migration, this mass migration, which is most unfortunate, and heart-rending scenes we have seen on television and read in the press about people going thousands or hundreds of miles, was this fear factor. As soon as people went away, ironically, from a business point of view, those migrant workers were people who were stuck or were there at workplaces. But when the unlock started happening, when you wanted them back, that was the time when they were going away. Ironically, many businesses have experienced that. But to address the issue of fear, I think it is all the issue and anxiety. It, to my mind, an issue of communication. The more we are able to reassure people that, look, this COVID doesn't go away tomorrow. We become more immune to it over a period of time. So we will have to live with it. You can't hide yourself. I happen to have an interesting quote I read the other day. And this is actually, how many of you people have read the book or seen the movie called, or the trilogy called Lord of the Rings? And I quote from here, it's a very interesting quote which is apt. And I quote, "The wide world is all about you. The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourself in, but you cannot forever get out." Unquote. So we can fence ourselves from all our fears and anxieties and everything, but we cannot prevent the world around us. So we have to be confident. We have to be able to communicate with each other that look, we will take all precautions, we will do everything, but we will survive. And we are going to be healthy and we are going to be safe on a personal front. On a business front, we will say that we are doing the best and applying our best efforts to see that our businesses work. So, really speaking, the issue of bringing back confidence is about communication, is about having belief in oneself and having the belief that I can adapt to the situation.
Okay, sir. So last question, which is a management related question, like, what do you think are key characteristics of a leader during this crisis times? Students भी हैं हमारे webinar attend कर रहे हैं, तो I think they would like to know.
भाई मैं कोई मैनेजमेंट गुरु नहीं हूँ, लेकिन I will keep going back to I'll keep going back to issues like communicating with your people, carrying your team, and leadership by demonstration, by action. मैं अगर आज बोलूं सबको कि भाई ऑफिस खुला है आप आ जाइए, और मैं नहीं, वो लीडरशिप नहीं है. It doesn't mean I'm being foolish. मैं आपको अपना उदाहरण बताता हूँ. When we opened office, we started office and said that we will have a restricted, restricted attendance. So anywhere up to 50% or 30%. First, because it was mandatory 33%, we started with that, then we went up. But when we found that the pandemic is becoming more now, because people are mingling, going out, and movement has happened, more opening up has happened. So it's bound to happen. So there's nothing to be there. So we have also dialed back a little bit and said, okay, anywhere about 35-40% is what we should have as attendance in office, right? So we started a roster system. So I was coming continuously every day for 3 weeks. Then even at leadership, we will not come daily, but we'll perhaps come alternate days or 2 days at a stretch. So it doesn't mean that today I'm taking this call from the office. If you had done it yesterday, 2 days ago, I might have been at home. So we will have to act by example, do the same thing that we expect our colleagues to do. So leadership really is going to be about bringing the team together by having a common goal, by aligning ourselves that we are going to achieve a common purpose. And most importantly, that we will succeed in whatever we do.
So I request Mr. Akhilesh Rathi to please give vote of thanks, sir.
Sir, we have been holding these seminars, Unfolding Secrets, the IMA Way, and I am very happy that the session 36 is addressed by a figure like you, who's the Vice Chairman, Managing Director of JK Organization, and also who's the Senior Vice President of All India Management Association, our parent body. I'm truly grateful and obliged to you, sir, on behalf of Indore Management Association, that you could spare time and also share your wisdom. I mean, most importantly, what I could gather in last 10-15 minutes is the words of wisdom that are flowing from a senior experienced person like you, which is most beneficial for the entrepreneur and also for some young management students or some colleges which are streaming this live. So thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot. And we'll be doing more such seminars because I think now IMA will have to work more online and more digitally. So we'll seek your support and guidance continuously from IMA as well in taking IMA forward. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jain. Thank you. And it was a pleasure being there. I don't know whether I, was able to meet with the expectations of your constituents, but certainly I have also learned something from the questions, and things like this makes me think it is a pleasure. I think, online, like All India Management Association also is doing, as you are, online programs. It is doing things which are even paid events, because physical events will take a long time and it will be difficult. We are finding industry bodies. Yesterday and day before, I serve on the global board of the International Chamber of Commerce Paris, which is the global apex organization of all ICC Paris. And we had our global meeting, and we had sort of our AGM, what we call the World Council meeting. So there were people all across the world virtually, and we did everything. And everything went off smoothly, all resolutions were passed, everything is happening. So it's a way of working, it's our mindset, and I'm sure IMA, Indore Management Association legacy will do a stellar job. My compliments to you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your blessing.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I thank